For reference, the balance beam is actually more narrow than my iPhone 11. The gymnast could do all of that perfectly. Hit vertical, great body position, but if she adjusts her hands, that is a 10th deduction. Okay, now we're going to reset the table. These are the difficulty scores from qualification on Sunday, and look at this. Simone has a 2-point edge on Rebecca. Also a swagger element to the rings, trying to show the judges like, yeah, this isn't hard. I could hold this forever. The thing is, it's really hard, even with assistance.
Well, our own sports reporter, Whitney Harding, you can see here from her days as a competitor on the junior Olympic level, she knows what she's talking about here, and she wants to help you better understand the sport as you watch at home. At Olympic trials, the U.S. women's team made history. At 22.2 years old, this is the oldest team since the 1952 games.
Boy, Whitney explains how this is a big moment now for the sport and why so many are hopeful this trend lingers in tonight's Chalk Talk.
Here is a visual of the average ages of the U.S. women's team from each Olympics starting in 1984 to this year. Now, the first four on the end, they're darker or more bold because in those years, gymnasts had to turn 15 years old in the year of the games. But starting in 2000, that changed to 16 years old, which partly explains a significant average age bump. There was also another big change in United States gymnastics for those 2000 games. Bella and Marta Karolyi had retired from coaching.
This year will mark probably one of the oldest U.S. women's gymnastics teams we'll ever have.
In 1996, 14-year-old Dominique Moceanu became the youngest U.S. gymnast to ever win an Olympic gold medal. Exactly 20 years after her coaches, Marta and Bella Karolyi, changed gymnastics forever with another 14-year-old star, Nadia Comaneci. Her perfect 10 is legendary, but it was her age that left a lingering legacy.
Well, the younger gymnast was coined by Bella Karolyi. Get the athlete prepubescent and you will get the most out of them. That was a mentality that was brought over from the communist system back in Romania, and of course that was then infiltrated into U.S. gymnastics.
Moceanu was the blueprint for this idea, one that gave her early success but has since led to many failures in the sport.
There was a lot of manipulation, there were a lot of scare tactics, and then if you were past your teens, then you weren't good anymore. You were like thrown away.
I felt like my gymnastics wasn't so much mine as a younger athlete.
In 2004, Mohini Bhardwaj raised eyebrows, making the U.S. Olympic team just shy of her 26th birthday.
I had a lot of people just looking at me like, who is this old lady and do they really think that they're going to make the team?
Bhardwaj wasn't exactly a late bloomer. She was part of the U.S. national team in her teens, but it wasn't until she trained in college as an adult that she found her rhythm.
When you become an older athlete and you're working with a coach, they know you're older. And so they actually listen to you and they know you're an adult and they accept that you're here to train and to do a job.
The last two Olympics with the Karolyis out of the USA Gymnastics picture, the average age of the U.S. women's team has been at least 20 years old.
I've always kind of believed this because when you're looking at other sports, really everybody's peak is in their like early, mid to late 20s. And that's your peak, I think, athletically, mentally. It makes you that much stronger.
You're not geriatric as a 16-year-old and you're not geriatric as a 23-year-old. It's kind of like opening these doors that we've never really seen open before.
Local for you, Whitney Harding, NBC4. The perfect 10 hasn't disappeared from elite gymnastics, it's just hidden. In 2006, the International Gymnastics Federation changed the scoring system to encourage and reward difficult skills. So now there are two scores that get added together, execution and difficulty. The D score starts at a 0 and then goes up with requirements, difficult skills, and bonus combinations. Now the E score is your perfect 10. It starts there and then judges begin deducting for all types of mistakes. So let's look at it in real time. We're going to use one of my old routines and we're going to monitor the execution on the right in orange, difficulty on the left in green. As I start the routine, you're going to see that orange bar start to decrease as we start noting my different deductions. On the left, you're going to see the green bar increase as I do bigger skills. So here's a combination. That's a blind change into my Jaeger release. So that green bar is going up, but at the same time, the orange bar also getting smaller because there were some bent knees, flexed feet separating, all kinds of things going on there. And this goes through the entire routine. At the end, like I said, the scores will be added together and that's your final. Now it goes really fast, so there's also two sets of judges as well. One group that tallies the difficulty, the other tallies the execution. So you don't have just a couple people having to do the whole thing, because yeah, that would be a lot.
How one wobble can lead to a big deduction. That's in tonight's Chalk Talk.
Every gymnastics routine is a balancing act between difficult skills, bonus combinations, and required elements. For example, on beam, every gymnast has to have a combination of 2 leaps and/or jumps. There also has to be a combination of 2 acrobatic or tumbling skills. But here's the thing, just because 2 skills are done back to back, that doesn't mean they are connected. The skills have to go in rhythm from one to the other. If there is a wobble between the two, even if the gymnast keeps going, that's not a connection, so no requirement and no bonus. Or if the gymnast falls off, that's a point deduction, plus she doesn't get credit for the connection and, again, no bonus. Lastly, particularly with the leaps, each skill has to hit the required angles or amplitude. For example, my leaps here are connected, but let's rewind. See my back leg? It's a bit low, so I'm not in the full split in the air. That's a deduction for not being fully executed, and you guessed it, I don't get the bonus. And remember, the judges are looking for the gymnast to do this as if they were on the ground, not 4 feet in the air on a 4-inch wide piece of wood. For reference, the balance beam is actually more narrow than my iPhone 11.
Yeah, how's that for perspective?
Oh, that's scary.
NBC4's Whitney Harding joins us to explain how the system benefits Simone Biles.
This system awards difficulty because in the old system, the start value was capped at the 10.0. So extra difficulty didn't increase the start score beyond that. It only increased the chance for deductions and falls. Now the difficulty score can just keep going up and up and up with harder skills. So it gives someone like Simone Biles, who can do unlimited difficult skills, an incredible advantage. And it's why she is almost unbeatable. Today's Chalk Talk lesson is coming to the chalkboard. These are the scores from qualification on Sunday for Simone and Rebecca Andrade from Brazil, who finished in second. These are their execution scores. So it's the old school system out of the 10.0. If you add up Simone's, she finishes with a 33.766 all around. And then look at this. If you add up Rebecca's, she finishes with a 34. So on the 10.0 scale, Rebecca actually beats Simone. Okay, now we're going to reset the table. These are the difficulty scores from qualification on Sunday, and look at this. Simone has a 2-point edge on Rebecca. This is why she's almost impossible to beat. And this is why the International Gymnastics Federation did this scoring system. Yes, her execution scores might be a bit lower because she's doing harder skills, but the point is to encourage and reward challenging skills. There are actually lots of hidden deductions on a skill that's right in front of you almost the whole time, the handstand. Watching an uneven bar routine, you see handstands everywhere, and the judges are also keenly looking for them. Every handstand has to be perfectly vertical with toes, hips, shoulders, and hands all in a line. A slightly short handstand can be 1/10 to 3/10 of a deduction, depending how far from vertical the gymnast finishes. There could also be 1/10 to 3/10 deduction for going past vertical, and a fall is a point off. This is any handstand, so after a full pirouette, yep, must hit that handstand in rhythm before continuing. And that brings up another issue. If the gymnast pauses in the handstand, if it's seen as stopping the rhythm of the bar routine, that can be a 10th deduction. And like everything in gymnastics, the gymnast has to keep form. Knees straight, toes pointed, legs together. The exception here is if the gymnast chooses to straddle up to the handstand as long as they finish back together. And the gymnast could do all of that perfectly. Hit vertical, great body position, but if she adjusts her hands, that is a 10th deduction. It's a small skill, but deductions can add up big. Local for you, Whitney Harding, NBC4.
Sports reporter Whitney Harding explains how those deductions are in the details in tonight's Chalk Talk.
Every little thing they can take off for.
And you best believe the judges will. A key thing to remember is the event is called still rings. And Ohio State's Drake Andrews says lots of deductions can come from simply not holding still.
You don't want to see people moving when they're in those positions. Like, it's hold for 2 seconds, and you look for their shoulders being in line with the rings on any strength position that they do, whether that's cross Maltese or invert cross.
And it's not just the gymnast's body that has to stay still.
You can get deductions for the ring swinging as well.
One spot where you can usually usually see movement is after a gymnast swings up to a handstand. Like the women on uneven bars, not hitting handstands just right can lead to repeated tense off.
You want to make sure you're in a tight position the whole time, because if you even do like a little check, like a little arch or a little hollow to try and fight for your handstand, it's a deduction. Also, just making sure the rings are turned. You want them to be turned out a little bit. If they're turned in, it means that your forearms are against the cables, and that's a deduction as well.
There is also a swagger element to the rings, trying to show the judges like, yeah, this isn't hard. I could hold this forever. The thing is, it's really hard, even with assistance. And Drake says there is one squad in particular that needs no assistance when it comes to swagger.
Rings is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful events to watch, especially for like the Chinese guys. Like, they're always usually so far ahead on rings, and the way they hold their positions is just like immaculate.
Local for you, Whitney Harding, NBC4. A full turn is required in every balance beam and floor exercise routine, but there is one turn in particular you're going to see a lot during the Olympics. The wolf turn.
Easy bonus. They're all like, okay, because I don't have to do harder skills.
A regular full turn adds 1/10 to your difficulty score. A single wolf turn doubles that, adding 2/10. Ohio State freshman gymnast Riley Guevara straps on her turn shoe for assistance and explains what makes this skill so hard.
Keeping your balance and not slipping off.
Especially as you add on revolutions.
One is you just like singly, like you can see where you're going to. You actually have to spin, so it kind of slides you around. You see my foot? It's off the beam.
And it's more than just staying on. The leg that is up in the air has to stay completely straight and at a 90-degree angle, which gets even harder, as you go down to the beam. If the leg that's straight dips down at all, you don't get credit for the skill. While it's harder to stay on the beam, doing a wolf turn on the floor has its own challenges.
For me, I think it's 10 times harder on the floor. I just feel like I can't actually like stay up. Like my heel just drops. Then they roll.
Don't let that spin out fool you.
That's what most people do. They literally just go.
The judges aren't fooled.
Even if they don't make their turn.
If the turn isn't completed the whole way around, you don't get the whole bonus. Well, guys, all 5 of the men on this year's U.S. Olympic team are or were NCAA athletes. And it's the norm for high-level men's gymnasts to compete in college. But what's becoming less of the norm is men's collegiate programs in general. According to the NCAA, in 1981, there were 59 Division I programs. Now there's only 12. That's a 79.6% decrease. And the fear is it's going to get worse.
It always like starts to get me more excited watching the Olympics, and just makes me want to work even harder to be one of those top athletes.
Earlier this year, Ohio State's Cameron Nelson and his teammates were competing against 3 members of Team USA. Paul Judah, Frederick Richard, and Asher Hong were here in Columbus in April competing for national titles. Now they are Olympic bronze medalists.
I think that was like probably the greatest part for me. It was just something surreal.
They literally said we're going to treat it like a college meet.
Former Ohio State Buckeye and 3-time Olympian Blaine Wilson knows firsthand how collegiate gymnastics develops Olympians.
When you get in those settings, it's loud, it's crazy. You can hear all kinds of stuff, the bells, and it's, you know, it gets you prepared for that atmosphere.
When Wilson arrived at Ohio State in the mid-1990s, there were 36 Division I men's gymnastics programs. That's 3 times more than today. And the concern is things will only get worse as college sports moves towards revenue sharing and universities have to prioritize.
A lot of colleges are going towards tiered systems. So you have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and OSU gymnastics tier 3.
How we fund our sports based on financial aid, based on revenue sharing, based on NIL is going to look different for each one. How we do that is to be determined.
Ohio State Athletic Director Ross Bjork says he is determined to try to keep all of the Buckeyes' 36 sports.
We call it Project 36 because that's what we want to stick to, and that's really the mission and the vision to do that. But it's going to look different.
Cameron and the Buckeyes can adjust to different. They just don't want to disappear.
Yeah, it's extremely vital. I think like it just goes to show like how much that NCAA is doing for the Olympics.